Go ahead, Sahir.
All right. Hey, but here we go. Y'all know what time it is, man. This is another episode of the Discussion Board Podcast, man. And yes, we have been going for some time. That's because dudes, as adults, man, we got real life things we got going on, schedules, jobs, family obligations, everything, everything under the sun, which I'm sure y'all are aware of. And, due to my stubbornness, I like to do it in person, which also contributed to us taking so long to get an episode in. But we got to get out, we can get it, like we've said. And Zoom is how we started, you know what I mean? Just to get that content out there, why not continue to go that route? So here we are. Now, for this episode, the topic of discussion will be player and coach relationships in sports. I believe that this is something that definitely needs to be talked about. It ain't nothing crazy, to the level of NIL deals and things of that nature. But I think it is something that's vital, to development of athletes on and off, the playing arenas. So I think this is something that we can dive into and hopefully get some good content out of it, get some good gems out of it. So
I feel like NIL deals are even a part of it. It's a part of the conversation because coaches have a huge part with that. But we
could be. But we're gonna start off with you, Reef. I just want you to give me just a little bit of your perspective on this. How important do you think the relationship is between a player and a coach? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Question being, how do I feel about relationships between players and coaches?
The importance of it.
How important? Yeah. How important it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's vital, right? I think that, especially when we talk about younger players, right? High school youth players, they're all still growing. Their mindset is still growing. Their mind is still growing. And not only that, but the way that they look at the game, whatever game they're playing, is still growing as well. You can look at the same thing when it comes to school, right? And talking about how important a teacher is at school and the impact that teacher makes on the child is the same thing for a coach. Reason being is because the child is only going to be motivated enough and put in the required work enough as they're told and the way that they're told about it. So, we've seen multiple times, all of us in personal experiences, we've seen where coaches aren't effectively communicating with the players, or players aren't effectively hearing and listening and learning from the coaches, and how that becomes a detriment for the player, when they go out on the field, when they try to perform. And not only that, but it becomes a detriment to how much they want to go out and perform. I've seen players come into seasons, excited, willing to go out and sacrifice and put out the work that they need to. But by the end of the season, not being motivated, whether it be because of frustration with the coach, whether it be because frustration with their playing time, all of these different things. And the coach has the overall control over all of that. So it's vital at the end of the day. You want to be able to have a great relationship with the coach. I think that in my best seasons and in my best times as being a player, it was always when I felt like I had a good relationship with my coach, right? Where I felt like I go to my coach and talk about anything past even football. Right? I could go to my coach and be like, hey, like this happened in school, right? Or hey, like I got in trouble with this. And them coming to your aid, not only, to be able to help you out and whatever consequences may be there, but also to come to your aid and be a father figure, right? I think one person that did that to the best of their ability, and I feel like was the best coach in that aspect, was Rondo, right? Rondo was always not only just a football coach, not always just being there for you when the field came, but it was also like when it came to your grades, when it came to family stuff and all those different things, he would have actual conversations around that with you, and that shows when you start to go throughout the season, that shows how much commitment those players have to that coach. So there's a whole bunch of different things with it, but just named a couple of them.
Say, what's your thoughts?
Honestly, I just want to piggyback off of what Reece said. Like, he basically hit like all the points that was necessary. Like, there are players like that. You know what I mean? I'm basketball, so I'm gonna just take, for example, there's players that's like hasn't been around like the game for a long time and would get a coach that is invested in them and would literally take their game to like a whole new level. Like, there's players like Joel Embiid and like Pascal Siakam who started late. They had coaches that believed in them and they had with their players that took their game to a whole new level. And now look at them, they're in the NBA and they're stars of their teams. So I feel like, yeah, like you having that player-coach relationship is very vital. It's going to take your game to the next level because you get more comfortable, like on the playing field. On the playing field, like I had a coach, his name was Sheba, and me and him, we did not have a good relationship, and it showed on court. Like I would be tentative to do things, I wouldn't be playing my game. But once I got around a coach that I was comfortable with, that I had a good relationship with, like Rob, sorry, you know who Rob is. Once I got around Rob and I started playing with Rob, I started really seeing my game flourish because I wasn't scared to make mistakes. I wasn't scared to go out there and just, play my game. So I feel like that player-coach relationship is very important, especially if you want to take your game to the next level. And what Reef was saying, like at the collegiate level, they don't have time to really train you and really try to develop you as a player because in your high school years and in your little league years with the coach that brought you to the collegiate level. You know what I'm saying? So that relationship that you have is very important. Also, you can also get like early morning workouts, workouts on the side, those one-on-ones with that coach once you develop that relationship because he's comfortable with you. He's like, okay, I know this player is going to work hard. I don't mind using the extra time to work with him. You feel what I'm saying? So that player-coach relationship is very, very key and very, very vital in order to take your game to the next level.
100%. And Josiah, I know you're about to go, but just to add on to what he was saying, because one thing I think, Isaiah, like you said, I like a lot is talking about the comfortability, right? I think that, and every player can attest to this, right? There's two stages of being an athlete when it comes to being on the team, right? There's that stage when you first get on the team and you try to prove yourself. And I think that's that's the most uncomfortable part of being on the team. And I think that that's when you're at your least, right? Because you're sitting there and you see your coach staring at you. You don't have a relationship with the coach. You're trying to prove that you're worthy enough, that you're good enough to get playing time, to get his trust, whatever it may be. I feel like the pinnacle, right, of your athletic career at whatever team you're at is when you have that relationship past that with your coach, right? Your coach knows who you are. Your coach knows what you bring to the table. Your coach knows how talented you are. And so now it goes from practice and games being him barking at you and telling you what to do to him having conversations with you about what the play is going to be, right? Him having conversations with you around game plan, all those things. And that builds a lot of confidence still in a player's heart, man. Like when you have a coach that's really talking to you about all the like nitty gritty stuff that's going on when it comes to team planning, scheming, all of that, it makes you feel confident. It puts you on, when you go on the field, you feel confident, And so like that going to what you were talking about with the relationship, that's what like the ideal player coach relationship is, right? Now, not every player is going to be able to get that opportunity to have that relationship, but at the end of the day, that's what we all should be, as an athlete, that's what you should be striving for.
For sure. Wait, hold on, sorry. Before you speak, I also want to talk on another thing that I was just thinking of. Like, yeah, we always look at the player and the player-coach relationship. Like, yeah, it's cool to look at the player because we was once there, but let's look at it from the coach's aspect. Like, a coach that really takes in a player and really develops a player into what he needs to be would kind of have like a blueprint of what they need to do for the next player. I know not all players are the same, but you could kind of gauge and kind of, take bits and pieces of what you did with this player and implement it into the next player to shoot another player up there. Like, I'm trying to think of like a coach that I had that kind of like shot players like out there that would just like start like pop.
I was about to say, perfect example is the coach that he's not an actual head coach, but he was a personal coach, worked with Jordan. He ended up working with Kobe and Dwayne Wade after. I mean, I feel like the shooting guard position, he just learned from what he was doing with Jordan and kept on moving after that.
Taking those players and just building them to what they needed to be. And also, I feel like off the field, off like athletics, you feel me? That would develop him as, if he had kids, like a parent, of how to deal with his kids. You feel what I'm saying? Like it develops a sense of, because it's like, okay, yeah, I know I'm developing this kid and he may not have what I need him to have right now, but I need that patience in order to wait to see what he can become. You know what I'm saying? And he could take those same skills that he learned in the athletic department and bring that into the home and have more of a piece. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. So I feel like those things are vital for a player-coach relationship.
Yo, I mean, y'all all hitting it right there, the nail on the head. You know what I mean? And that's why I wanted to have the discussion, because when you're an athlete, man, like this, the coach is, I think a lot of the times, outside of your skill set, outside of your talent, who we are playing for is also ultimately going to determine how effective or how productive you can be. Because you can be a talented player, but you're playing in the wrong system. And then if you move to somewhere else where a coach knows how to exploit your abilities, you can become a player that nobody ever expects out of you. Prime example, case in point, I look at most recently a Jalen Brunson. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even sure where he was before the Mavericks, but you get a guy like Jason Kidd up in there coaching him, and now he can instill confidence within a player. And you see how electrifying he was in the first round. Matter of fact, and throughout the duration of the playoffs past NBA season, when Luka Doncic wasn't even playing. So, to me, coaches are teachers first and foremost. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not inside a classroom, they're out there in a playing arena, whatever it is. Court, field, bowling alley, tennis, you know what I'm saying? Whatever you want to call it, whatever you know what I feel me? Wherever
not the bowling alley.
Wherever games are played, I want to make sure I get everybody in there. Wherever your games are played, coaches are teachers, right? And I think, like y'all have been saying, the high school level is vital because you're not only developing players, but you're developing young individuals, men or women, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times when you listen to commentators of professional sports or sports in general, they always say that coaches have to be leaders of men or leaders of women. You know what I'm saying? And that holds true because we're still evolving. We're still learning. We're still trying to be individuals, when we're not on the playing field or the playing court, whatever it is. We still have to be regular citizens, and we got to know how to conduct ourselves in the real world. Now, sports helps with that, but if you got a teacher that can do both on and off, and that is really, 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 really positive to you and to your development. Now, I'd also say coaches, they instill culture, they instill a system. Players want to play for specific coaches because they know that the system and that the culture that they have will build them up to be the best players that they can. I give you examples like Pat Summitt, the University of Tennessee Volunteers women's basketball coach. Dawn Staley, she's the University of South Carolina women's basketball coach. Coach K, Greg Popovich, Eric Spoelstra, Dabo Sweeney, guys like that.
I'll say get some football in there, man. Nick Saban, you know what I'm saying? Bill Belichick, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you feel me? So it's coaches like that when you go to their program, you go to their organization, whatever it is, it's not just you go ahead and you do whatever. You know that there is a standard operating procedure when you go into those buildings and into those facilities. And that also inserts a level of discipline within you. Like, we look at the Patriots. Look at what's his face over there? Bill Belichick. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've heard Cam Newton talk about his experience there, and he was like, when you're there, it is a mental stamina that you have to have. And you know what I'm saying? And there's no mistake when they call it the Patriot way, because it is a certain level that a certain way that you have to operate when you're there, when you're involved with that organization. So I think that when you have a relationship with the coach that can instill confidence, that can instill culture, that has a system that has proven to be successful, you know what I'm saying, then that is only going to benefit you in the present and in the long run, because you can take what you've learned there and you can apply it to the other levels that you go in. And that may be even your playing days, or that may be even when you start to coach. A lot of players turn to that after their playing time is done. So I think that the relationship that you have with a coach is always either going to be ways that can benefit you or harm you in certain instances. Like, we can look at, me as an example, and I'm sure we've all got examples. If you're an athlete, you have an example of a coach that put you in probably not the best situation, and it ended up hurting you in the long run. You know what I'm saying? My shoulder, for an example. I wasn't supposed to be playing the position that I was, but me following instructions and following orders from the coach that I was playing for, I was willing to do what I needed to do for the team. Put me in a bad situation. I ended up getting seriously hurt, and that definitely impacted and affected my playing career, because I was never the same after that. But I promise you, if I'm playing for a coach, that doesn't put me in a position like that, it doesn't put me in a situation like that, then the outcome is obviously going to be much different. So I think that the relationship is definitely vital.
You bring up a great point. and it's what I wanted that route this conversation to next. And it's about, right, the fact that you had a situation where your coach probably didn't put you in the most effective position possible based on what your situation was, and it ended up hindering you in your football career. I think a lot of players take these situations that do happen, such as that, and start to become the victim, or claiming to be the victim in certain cases where they are actually really aren't, right? And so I think that what we see a lot is this type of tension or like constant like battle between situations where the coach isn't being the most effective, or the player isn't just being malleable and he's not being teachable, right? And so my question to you guys would be, what do you guys think is the most prevailing like issue or factor when it comes to player coach relationships? Do you think that it is the lack of effectiveness with certain coaches, or do you think it's the overall mindset of today's player?
To be honest, the answer to that question, I feel like both parties play a role. Like, I feel like if the player isn't teachable, then the coach kind of shuns him. It's like, all right, I don't want to coach this player because he isn't, you feel me? He isn't teachable. But then you could also flip it, and the coach may just have his favorites. Like, okay, this player are my two favorites. Y'all are kind of just like backup dancers, if we could put it in that sense. You know what I'm saying? So those players don't really get the development that the other two will. You feel what I'm saying? So I feel like the answer to that question is kind of like there's no one party that is more responsible for not being able to have that player relationship, that player coach relationship. Like, I feel like both parties kind of play a factor into that. You know what I'm saying? What you think?
I was gonna say, let me sharpen that point, because you're right. I think like there is gonna be some level of responsibility on both parties. Now, if you are not a coachable player, you know what I'm saying? Like Zay said, coaches aren't going to spend that much time with you, because if I continue to try to instruct you and you continue to disregard what I say, then I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to pour into you if you're not accepting of what I have to teach you or what I have to tell you. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to move to the players that I know want to get better, that I know are going to be coachable and are going to be teachable. Now, on the coach's side, I think it also depends on their mindset and their agenda. You know what I'm saying? Because if winning is at the forefront, then development may not be there as well. You know what I'm saying? Because if I want to win, then that means I need to get the players that are going to get me those W's. And that means I might have to throw to the side players that aren't really up to the levels in which I expect them to play. A great example of this, and Zay knows it, Reef, you probably know it to a certain degree, but it happens a lot in AAU basketball. You call them ringers. Like, a coach will have a team established. They'll have players, dedicated players, who come to practice, who come to the workouts, and try to put in that time, put in that work to get better, and to be somebody that the coach can rely on when it comes game time. But then that same coach will turn around and just start calling up 5 or 6 other players that they know are highly skilled and highly intelligent players of whatever sort, basketball or football, whatever it is. And they'll tell them, I have a game this coming date. I need y'all to be there. It's either a playoff game or it's a championship game, and I need y'all to help me win this. It's happened plenty of times. It's happened to me. It's happened on some teams that I've seen. It's happened to my siblings, you know, where the players that are there and they're giving it 100%, you feel me? Like, they just kind of get casted out. And the coach will be like, listen, I appreciate y'all, but we need to win. You know what I'm saying? And that leads to, you know, a disconnect between players and coaches, because now I've lost my trust in you. I don't know if I can play for you. And when you don't know if you can play for a coach, that makes a season very long for both player and coach. You know, so I think to answer that question, I think responsibility can fall on both sides.
And yeah, I agree with both of you guys. And I think one thing that, you know, to look forward in my, you know, looking back at my career, my college career and high school career, and looking back at some of the things that I know, you know, I could have done better, some of the things that maybe some of the coaches I played with could have done better. Yeah. I began to realize that coaches-player relationships are no different than any relationships that we see in the world today. And when especially when it comes to mentor-mentee relationships, you take parent and child, right? You take teacher and you take student, right? You take a tutor and you take a student that's being tutored. Like all these different situations have so many different what's the word I'm looking for? Perspectives coming from both ends, right? You got a younger person who's not that experienced in life and doesn't have the full concept of what life is, compared to a person who obviously has been through life a lot longer, has a certain level of maturity, has a certain level of understanding, right? So I think that clash, that's the first clash that I see a lot comes when it comes to coach-player dynamics, right? Like I remember when I was a younger player, and certain, as a younger player, you're a lot more short-sighted than a coach may be, right? You're a lot more short-sighted as to what the situation is and what it may play out to be than a coach may be, right? And so you might come into a situation where you feel like you should be starting, or you might come into a situation where you feel like you're not getting enough playing time, or you may come into a situation where you feel like you made the right play on that play when your coach is telling you haven't. Yeah. And because your coach is opposing that, you immediately get this anger, you immediately get this frustration, you immediately get this wall that you put that, okay, he's against me, he's not on my side, right? I feel like that's another thing with a lot of players. It's like either the coach is for us or against us. When at the end of the day, the coach don't work for us. You know what I'm saying? He don't work for us, but he's there to make us the best player that we could possibly be. But it's not like he's gonna die on the hill for you. You know what I mean? He has 80, maybe 50, maybe 30, maybe 20 in a basketball setting, other players that he has to worry about. So on the player side, I feel like a lot of players have to start to be a little bit more patient and a little bit more mature and understanding when it comes to the dynamic with their coach. You have to realize that the coach has a way more bigger mindset than you do. You're just thinking about the position that you play, the time that you're going to get, and the glory that you're going to have. His thought process is a lot bigger. You know what I mean? Secondly, I think one thing we have to also realize is it's two different complete people, right? Just because they're playing and coaching on the same team. We see the same thing with players and players. Just because we're all on the same team doesn't mean that we're just going to gel together perfectly. Right? We're all from different places, different backgrounds, different everything, right? So I've had situations where I feel like, it just didn't hit right with a coach. Not because we were bad people, not because I was a jerk or he was a jerk, but simply just because our vibes were just different. You know what I mean? And so for you to understand that, not only as a player, but as a coach too, for the coach to understand that, and the coach that in that situation is that coach's job to be like, okay, what is the best way I could go about this? Maybe it's taking that player and having lunch with them, right? Maybe it's calling them to the office, which Rondo used to do, religious, just to talk, just to talk to you. You know what I'm saying? Different things like that. Like I think that there's so many different clashes when it comes to the battlefront of a player-coach relationship that it's kind of like on both sides, they hit one and it's just like, all right, so that's just a wall. They just put up a wall. You know what I mean? Like my coach isn't listening to me. Wall. I'm not getting playing time. Wall. This player isn't coachable. Wall. You know what I mean? Whereas more like you have to realize that the same way that you put in time and effort into the relationship with your daughter, the way you put time and effort into relationship with your father, the way you put time and relationship and effort into your relationship with your professor, it's the same thing with your coach. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a one-season thing. You know what I mean? That's why you see players develop 4 years. That's why you see players develop 3 years. They got to go into the system, get accustomed to it, understand the coach that they're playing with. The coach has to understand them. They have to realize that the route that player can go to be the best that he can, and they have to go to that. That doesn't happen just like this. But I think a lot of coaches and players look at it as supposed to be some type of immediate thing. Like a player comes in and it's just supposed to mesh. It just won't work like that. We have to be realistic with the fact that we're all just completely different people, you know?
But also, I feel like coaches and players also don't have that, I'll say like on court or on field maturity. Like what Sai was saying, like when coaches just want to win, they just feel like, okay, if they pick up this person, this player, and this player, that when they come and play, they have to win because it's them. Like, how can y'all lose? That's basically how coaches really be thinking. And that's why they will go for the ringers. That's why they would go for the biggest men that they see out there, because they feel in their mind, these players that I'm playing with or that I just picked up, they have to win. Mm-hmm. You know what I feel like? They would have that maturity to really take another player and really sit down and be like, yo, let's go out and let's go grab a bite, or let's go do this, that, and the third, because they don't have that mindset. They don't have that maturity. And once the player, I feel like because we're also younger, our minds aren't as developed as theirs. I feel like because we're younger and we don't get that recognition that we should, we automatically shun them off. Even if they would try to make the effort, I feel like you still have that mental block up because we're younger. We don't really understand, like, okay, this person is trying to reach out and make an effort to help me. You know what I'm saying? So all I see now is you're against me. You're against me. You feel me? So they don't really have that maturity to really sit down and, you know, evaluate the situation. Like, okay, maybe he's just trying to help me and he's not just being a-hole all the time. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah. And look, going back to the point that you were making about coaches, and Josiah made it earlier, coaches picking players to be able to win, right? I want to go back to the previous statement I made before we started recording. We have to make two different categories when it comes to coaches, right? The collegiate coach and the high school / youth coach, two different things. Even when it comes to the high school coach, you can put there's certain high school coaches that feel the pressure that college coach does. And what I mean by that is you can't, there's certain, I feel like there's a, when it comes to sports, there are developmental teams and areas, right? There's places where, you know, hey, I'm going to here because I want to develop my game. You know what I mean? And there's places where, you know, you hop in and it's high level off rip. Yeah. You know, we can't sit here and act like when I was a high school player, let's say I got into IMG, I can't sit here and be like, oh, my coach didn't spend time with me. It's either I got it or I don't. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's either I got it or I don't. So college, same thing, especially when it comes to D1 and D2 level. They're going to spend some time in developing, but mostly developing the guys that they know they're going to get a guaranteed rate return on their investment. You know what I mean? They're not going to sit here and have a guy like me and Joe know firsthand. There's guys that came in that never played football a day in their life, or play only football a year or 2 years before they went to college, and they didn't have the football IQ when it came to Division II football. It wasn't. I personally don't think it's the coach's fault that they didn't give them the time of day. You know, they got a whole bunch of bigger fishes to fry, and their paychecks on the line for it. You know, now when we talk about the developmental areas, right, like a Pee Wee football league, like the well, you just named the basketball league. What we're talking about, AAU basketball league, right? Those are situations where I feel like coaches are being a waste of a spot, because if you're going to be a championship winning mindset type of coach, go coach at a high level high school college team, you know, because that's not what's needed when it comes to these 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. That's not what's needed. We need coaches that want to develop those people, you know. And then to your point about the players and them shutting off, that's my exact point though. Like, and that's one thing that we always talk about it. Sports teach you real life. People say you play sports and you get a real life feel of things, right? And the one thing that I know sports taught me when it came to real life, and I learned it, I saw it, the proof was in the pudding when we graduated, is no one, at the end of the day, your hill, your corner is your corner. No one else is going to stand there for you. So granted, you would love to have a coach to be there for you and mentor you and do everything that he has for you. And you want him to make that initiative, but you also have to make the active initiative to try and get that as well. I promise you, there's no coach that will look at a player that's putting in maximum effort every day, coming in early, leaving late, putting in the pain to be able to get where he wants. And they're not going to be like, all right, I'm going to give this kid a shot. All right, I'm going to see what this kid's made of. All right, I'm going to listen to this kid. There are some coaches out there that aren't built like that, and those are the ones that we're talking about that are ineffective. But most of the time, you put in the pain. I've been there myself. I've come to a team before where no one paid me no mind. You know what I mean? I've been to a team before where it's just like, oh, yeah, he's just another guy. But guess what? You know when they first started noticing me? I remember freshman year when I came to college, and my freshman, everybody that knows me, my freshman year academically and football wise was horrible. My coach called me that winter break, was like, yo, I think you may have to start looking at going to JUCO schools. He didn't have the confidence in me, right? This is a similar situation to what we're talking about. Yeah. Now, I could have either took the decision and blacked off, which I did for a second. I could have blocked off. I'm transferring. Screw this. I'm not doing this no more. This coach don't want me to succeed. This, that, and the third. Or I could be like, all right, I'm gonna prove my point, right? And guess what? That summer, I didn't have anywhere to stay on campus. Not that they gave me on-campus housing, but I found a way to got up there for the summer workouts. And my coach saw that, and he was like, all right, word. Nah, this kid, he wants this. And then that's when they started to put the interest and time into me. So as a player too, you can't. Then that's life, bro. When you get a job, when you first start working, it's not like your boss is gonna come up to you like, oh my gosh, let me show you this, let me show you that. They probably give you 1 week of training. After that, it's on your own, dog. And that's what it is. And you just gotta get it done yourself. Ain't nobody gonna be feeling sorry for you. Ain't nobody gonna. That's one thing I really appreciate learning from sports. Stop looking for pity, bro. Yeah. Stop looking for pity from the coaches, from your players, from your teammates. Stop looking for it. no one's gonna give it to you. And it's sad for you to look for it. If you're an athlete and you have goals in mind and you want to accomplish something, stop looking for someone else. You accept the help and the resources that are there. And that's the reason why we do things like, for the love of the city camp, things like that. We want to bring the resources to the people, but go out and get it yourself too, dog. Stop looking for someone to give you a handout.
Yo, I got a question. Do you feel like having a player relationship coach can be detrimental to the player? Like, to the point where he gets too comfortable with the coach, where if he has to get coached by another coach, it's harder for him? Like, do you guys think that will, in the long run, hurt the player rather than progress the player even further?
I think it depends on the player, honestly. Go ahead, Joe.
It does. I mean, I think for players, I think you can get comfortable, but at some point in time, and like we've said, sports, it teaches you real life. You have to adapt. You have to adapt because everything is not going to always be the same. And if you can't find comfort in discomfort, then you're going to have a hard time wherever you go, whatever level that you're playing on. So I think you have to have some level of adaptability, to be successful and to have a long career.
All right. Hold on, Reef, before you go. So do you feel like if a coach gets a player to a certain level, like let's say he's starting to get offers and stuff like that, do you think that the coach should then back off a little bit just to have that player swim on his own? Or do you feel like he should keep his foot on the pedal and just keep pushing him to that next level, or to keep propelling him forward to whatever the next level may be? Or do you feel like
Yeah, and I was gonna say again, I think it depends on the player. And going back to the player-coach relationship that you're saying, having like a player-coach type of player, we had a similar player like that, J5, when we were at Pace, where I think that he was basically like a coach, not as much as he was a player, but he was like a coach in a lot of aspects. Like he would run some of the workouts that we would do when the running backs were having their drills and there's no coach, he would do it. And I think that as a coach, you have to know when you have a player like that. Yeah. I don't think that's just anybody. I think that, the same way in school, there's, the people who are top of their class, and it's just once in a generation type of people. I think player coaches are kind of the similar situation where you have a player that's just on the mentally on a whole nother level than everybody else. He's way mature than everybody else. He's been around the block, you know what I mean? He has a great understanding of whatever schemes y'all have or whatever sport y'all play. He has to be on that level to where it's like, okay, I can trust him with this, because at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about him getting a little bit too cocky, because that's not him in the first place. He's too mature to have that type of mindset, J5 never got too cocky to where he would back talk to one of the coaches, you know what I mean? He had respect for the coaches, but he had that leadership role too.
Right. And I give you 3 examples: Chris Paul, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Those are the type of players you're talking about. Like, that they're just an extension of the coach on the field or on the court. Like, not much needs to be said, but they'll still make sure that they're implementing your culture, your system, and your process on the field. They don't just go out there and they just do their own thing. Like, they make sure that they keep that inserted within the team.
And then I think also, I don't think you could do that with players. Maybe high school you'll find a player like that. And I don't think you do that with adolescent kids. I don't think you do that with adolescent kids. They don't have the maturity and mindset for it yet. Going to the question that you asked more recently about whether a coach should, continue to be, 100% all effort on that player. Like I said, I think that depends too. If you have a player that has no one else in his corner, like for example, me and Joe, we had family members that were always there for us, that made sure we were training, made sure we were getting out and doing our thing. So I don't feel like a coach needs to be as prominent. Obviously, he's the most experienced and knowledgeable person when it comes to the sport out of that person's, nuclear circle, but he doesn't have to be of that much of an imprint. Now you have a person that maybe living in a single mom household, or maybe, doesn't have a lot of people going or rooting for him or doing stuff around him, resources. I think a coach should play more of a role in that situation, because the coach has to realize that is opportunity for that kid to leave the situation that he is currently in, right? Like you see that a lot of times with the coach, like you see like Lamar, like I don't know, I can't name them off the top of my head, but they're professional players right now that have a great relationship still with their high school Pee Wee coaches. And it was because their coach knew, looking, the situation you're in right now, this is your ticket out of here. And so I'm going to do everything in my power to help you get to that point, right? Obviously, it's still only to a certain level because you still have your whole team to worry about. But I think that there should be a great investment by coaches into players that are getting highly recruited. And because how you expect the 18-year-old kid to really understand how to maneuver around that? You know what I mean? If they don't have a family member, if they don't have another coach to back them up on it, you're the only one that they have to really guide them through it.
At that point, you're not really just a coach. You kind of at that point too. So it's kind of your foot on the pedal. This person might go astray. So yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about for sure.
Yeah, but like we said, you know, they're teachers. They're teachers, they're mentors, because a lot of the times it will stretch beyond the playing field. And especially when we're talking about kids or young adults that's getting ready to go away to college and they're going across country, you know what I'm saying, to play for big institutions and big programs, you know, that they really are just there by themselves. Like a guy coming from Florida getting ready to go to the University of Oregon or vice versa, you know what I'm saying? Like they always got to have that, you know, connection to home or, you know, some familiarity that they can rely on to help get them through and to persevere. So I think coaches are extremely important when it comes to that aspect because one, you know the landscape of the game. So not only can you be there, and you know the landscape of the game, and you know the personality of the player that's going there. You know, so you can help them out with both. You can help them with what is necessary and what you have to now take on as responsibilities when it comes to this next level that you're at. But then you also got to make sure that you're pushing them in the direction that they need to be based on their skill set, based on their maturity level, based on all of that. You know, so coaches, they play a huge part, man. And parents rely on coaches too. You know, like a lot of parents may not fully understand how sports goes. I think college is a major factor in that, and professional sports is a major factor in that because, you know, for a first generation kid or for somebody who's just getting ready to go to college and play sports for the first time, this is a whole new area that people have not traveled at. You know, they are unfamiliar with this territory, so they need to rely on individuals who can help guide them through. And those are coaches. You know, those are coaches. Like even now, I didn't make it to the league, but I guarantee you that the kids that I'm coaching at the youth football level, I can get you to college. You know, I know enough to where I know the type of mindset that you need to have, the type of work ethic you need to have, the type of talent that you need to have in order to get now not only D2, but the D1 levels of college, you know, and that's just from the experience that I've had.
You know the road.
You know what I'm saying? So imagine a coach that has gone through that. You know what I'm saying? Imagine a coach that did play D1 ball, that did play professional ball, maybe 2 to 3 years, but they played nonetheless. They can come back and give everything that they've learned to a player to get them there. You know what I'm saying? And probably beyond that.
Yeah. I feel like a coach's job is to do that. I feel like a coach's job is to take that next player and push him further to where even he got.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Coach's job is like that makes I feel like that makes a player coach relationship even easier for the coach, especially if they was in your shoes before. Like I feel like okay, they know what it takes, so it's much easier for them to develop a relationship because they understand what you're going through.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
One thing I will say though, I was on the players a lot today. I feel like with coaches, the one thing that I definitely feel like a lot of coaches, you know, should keep in mind going into coaching is just having an understanding mind, man. Just having an open mind too, because it's like I've had so many times before. As much as I'll put the guilt on me, in a lot of the bad situations I've had at being an athlete, a lot of the times that Josiah can attest to this was just a misunderstanding, right, between the coach and me, because I never had any malice towards the coach before. I never had any anger, frustration, unless I felt like I wasn't being heard or I feel like I was being, unfairly treated. And I think that if a coach sees that that's to be the case, you know, not always respond with anger, to respond with that wall, as I was saying, but to try to see where that player is coming from, right? Because I do know there are certain players that just mentally just checked out. You can't really, you know, work with them.
Yeah.
But then there are those players that it's just that tension that you have to break down before you can actually have that relationship, right? Like I don't want to be name dropping or saying anybody, but you know, there's been coaches where I feel like we could have actually had a great relationship had we had just talked it out, you know. But every time that it was a conversation, every time that it was a situation on the field, it was Sharif, stop. Sharif, you're doing too much. Sharif, this, that, and the third, right? Instead of pulling me to the side and like Rondo used to do. I'm sorry, Rondo's probably my favorite, like my favorite coach I've ever had. I ain't gonna lie, but like Rondo I remember there was times me and Rondo would go at it on the field, and after he would make sure he would come to me, he would be like, he would talk to me about it. If he felt like I was being reasonable, he would talk to me about it. He'd be like, where was your head on that? You know what I'm saying? You have to understand where I'm coming from with this. And then when a coach does that to you, you feel hurt. You know, you feel like, all right, I can actually talk to this man. You know what I mean? But if it's only me and you just barking and then we leave practice and you just make me run, you know,
it's gonna be unhealthy. It has to be a certain level of understanding between both player and coach. Like, I need to, as a player, I need you to see my level of thinking. But then as a coach, I need the player to see my level of thinking as well. Like you said, like I can be telling you this because I see the results. I see the domino effect. And I need you to get into a position to where you can be effective, not only for yourself, but for the team aspect. But then from a player, if you know you kind of just rely on your athletic abilities, you know, and your knowledge of the game, you could be thinking to yourself that I'm doing the right thing, you know, but it can be detrimental to, you know, the success of the team, even though you may have made a good play, you know. So like you said, I think there should be a certain level of understanding between both. And if you can have the dialogue either after or during, where y'all can both be like, okay, what was your thought process on this? Let me understand where you're coming from. Let me try to get you to understand where I'm coming from. You know what I'm saying? Players, coaches like that are so important, man, and so necessary, because now as a coach, you're also developing, you know, the level of thinking for a player, because now you get outside of yourself and you're like, okay, I understand. You know, like I think if I were to do this, you know, that makes sense for everybody else that's either next to me or behind me, you know. So I think that's a great point.
No, 100%. And I have a perfect example for that, because it's crazy. When you were talking about that, I was thinking about the example in my head. Franklin Pierce. I remember this like it was yesterday, bro. We're playing Franklin Pierce. I was in the game and I forgot. I think they had lined up with 11, so they had one tight end on the outside. And usually when that happens, right, there's a certain adjustment that we do as the linemen. I ended up lining up in the wrong gap, so I was supposed to be in the C gap, ended up landing in the B gap because I had saw that extra tight end, and ended up making the play actually in the backfield. I made a tackle for a loss. And I remember getting up, I was feeling good about myself. I didn't realize at the time that I was lined up in the wrong gap, because adrenaline was pumping. I was in the game. I was trying to just make a play. Turn around after the play is over, and coaches are barking at me. They're like, Sharif, you lined up in the wrong gap. What's wrong with you? This, that, and the third. And in my head, that frustrated me, because it's like, why was that the first thought, right? Obviously, looking back on it now, it makes sense why it was the first thought, because they're trying to have, like you said, like the coach sees everything. They see the play that happened. They're like, you didn't do the right thing. I'm looking at what I just did. I'm like, I just made the play, right? But in that situation, let's say I'm a little bit more patient with the coaches barking at me on the sideline, and I'm like, all right, taking a step back, I might have done something wrong. Let me go to the sideline after this drive is over and talk to my coach about it, right? Or them in their situation being, hey, he made the wrong move. He was in the wrong gap, but the play is over. We're on the next play. Just to give him the next play when he comes on the sideline, or we go into the film room, we discuss that, right? But none of those were thought about, obviously, because of the adrenaline pumping from both sides, you know, anger, all that. But that's just a perfect example of how communication can be a lot better. And I think it's also a perfect example of, I think the reason why they had done that to me was because there was this kind of connotation on me in my 4 years in college of like, Sharif isn't going to get it right. Like he doesn't have a full understanding and concept of the defense, or he doesn't have a full understanding and concept of this play. So it's like as if like everyone was getting ready for that mess up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the reason why I bring that up is because I feel like as coaches, they have to stop attaching the past on their players. You know, like you'll have a player that came in their freshman year, didn't do great, but then 3 years later has developed and worked hard to get to where he wants to. That freshman year isn't him anymore. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of the times the coach will attach that freshman year, that sophomore year, that one moment that they messed up, or that bad season that they have, and it will just be a part of them for the rest of their life. The same way a player might have a great freshman year, and be mediocre for the next 4. But just because they had that great freshman year, the coaches would never stop trying to put in the time. So, just detaching the past from it. Every season is a new season. The NFL does a perfect job of that, right? To a point where it's kind of ruthless, but it's what have you done for me this season? It's not like, oh, you did that great last season. Okay, so now you got to do the same thing this season for me to think that you're nice, And so the same thing with the player that didn't do well. You didn't do well the last season. All right, that's done. That's in the past. Now, what type of player are you going to be this season, right? I think that's another thing coaches should work on.
I feel like the world is just based off, especially in that business. I feel like negativity carries instead of the good that, like. I'm not gonna talk about everybody.
I'm not gonna drop. Yeah, we can't drop no names, man. Can't drop no names, man.
For anybody, like negativity is it's looked upon more than the good that you would do. Like, yeah, you get a little too clap for, you feel me, a good play that you did or something good that you did. But if you did something wrong, you will get a whole lecture and a half on why you did this wrong, what you did wrong, how you did this wrong, because everything is just thrived off of negativity. So I feel like as coaches, like, yeah, we're players, bro, we're humans. We're gonna mess up. But if you dissect like what we did wrong and you really sit down with us and you really explain to us like why we did this wrong and how if you continue to do this, how it will be detrimental to the team, it will help the player understand like, okay, so I can't do that anymore. I should continue to do this. Coaches just try to instill good habits into their players, but they do it or they take the wrong approach to doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't feel like always like the coach is negative. I just feel like if their approach was a little bit tweaked and a little bit different, their players would have better outcomes.
As a coach, I'm gonna just say this real quick, Reese. But as a coach, you gotta always adapt your style to your players. You can't coach every single player the same way. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta know what provokes or what taps into a player's, inner confidence or whatever it is, because that's the only way you're gonna, like, some player may respond to just blunt language or whatever, like, or even cursing to some degree, like coaches to get at that too, like X, Y, and Z, you know what I'm saying? Like, and the player will respond, but that may not work for his teammate. You know
right.
what I'm saying? I can't sit here and just start barking at somebody, just because I was able to do it to the other dude. Like, 100%. You got to know that players are always going to garner different type of reactions and different type of, like you said, methods in order to bring the best out of them. Like, me and Reef on the same team in college, coaches can't talk to him the same way they'll talk to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different approaches that you got to take. Same thing for you, Zay. You know what I'm saying? When we play on basketball teams, you're not going to get the same thing out of me if you're going to try and take that same approach. So I think that that's also something on the coaching side that you got to understand, is that these players, especially nowadays, who are a lot more sensitive than we were growing up. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is just a certain way that you have to communicate effectively in order to get the most productivity out of them.
Exactly. It's like being on court. Like, it's almost like knowing player personnel. It's like, yeah, like if I'm running on a 3-on-2, I know I can pass this ball like this to somebody and they'll catch it for a layup. But if I know if I'm running with somebody else, I probably can't make that same pass because they might not be able to handle it. You know what I'm saying?
Personnel, for real, yeah.
So it's literally like the same thing. But Reef, what was you about to say? You was about to say.
I was gonna say one thing that I totally slipped my mind too. That's huge when it comes to coaches. Also, be truthful, man. Oh my gosh, be truthful. If you know a player isn't what you want him to be to start, don't be telling him, oh yeah, you just gotta do this, that, and the third. Be real with him. Nah, you're not where you were supposed to be at yet. Do this, that, and the third. Maybe we'll talk again in mid-season. You know what I'm saying? A lot of players end up losing their motivation and their want to, because they're led to believe one thing and then another thing occurs, and then coaches are sitting there wondering, why isn't this kid bought in? Well, because he bought into a whole different thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was bought into a whole different thing, and now you showing him something else. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so like with a coach, I that's one thing I wish. I'm not gonna say I never had, but I wish in a lot of instances that I had, coach being real with me, being like, yo, listen, like, you know, not being like, oh, you have the build to do this and you have the to do this. Nah, just be real. Sharif, you're not good at this. You're not good at that, but you're good at this. So what I need you to do to get better at this is this, that, and the third. That for that reason, you're not here. You know what I mean? Or even when I remember though multiple times, let's say I was walking and asked why there's a certain reason why I didn't get this many plays, or this happened on the depth chart, this, that, and the third. And I get it, right? To be a coach means that you have to deal with confrontation a lot. And as a human being, you don't want to deal with that a lot. So if the player comes up to you with that, maybe sometimes you don't have the energy, and sometimes you want to just give him a misleading answer, you know what I mean? Or something that would just throw him off your back for a while. But understand what you're doing when you do that. You know what I mean? Understand what you're doing when you do that, because that player is going to come back with that. You told him one thing, so he's coming with that thought process on it, you know? Yeah. And we're emotional about this stuff, man. Like, the players are emotional about this stuff. They're emotional about the time that they play. You know what I mean? They're emotional about whether they win or not. They're emotional about the plays that they made, if they messed up or if they didn't, if they're good enough or they're not. All these things are amplified by 10 when you're an athlete, bro. Like, you go to bed depressed sometimes over stuff like this. You know what I mean? And coaches, I don't think they really grasp that. So it's like they just think that they just go home and everyone goes home. Like, nah, some kids it's really eating at them, you know? And when we talk about, you know, different teams having lack of effort, or different teams having, you know, lack of motivation, or different teams having lack of discipline, it's not all just like what you see on the front. There's a lot of deeper things that go behind that. A lot of deeper things that go behind that extend throughout the season, extend throughout training camp. You know, so coaches need to be aware of that, bro.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
We good. That was a great point, Reed, to leave us off with, man. Anything else anybody got before we wrap this thing up?
Nah, man. Yo, for the love of the city, you already know what it is. Be there or be square.
So, yeah, there you go. There you have it. We got For the Love of the City coming up this Saturday. And we're going to get some more episodes in, man. We've been telling y'all we was going to come back. We all be here. You know what I'm saying? This is not just something that's a product of the pandemic. We're not just going to leave it to the pandemic. We're going to keep this going, you know? So tune into the episodes that we have. We're going to keep dropping some more content for y'all. And y'all already know what it is, man. This Discussion Board Podcast.
Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom.